Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a full review of the game, the first Berserker Khazan. This is my first time ever doing a review like this on my channel, so hopefully it's not too bad. I remember hearing about the demo of this game being released like months back, and I saw some streamers playing it, and it looked pretty cool, but it didn't look like anything special, and I didn't anticipate on trying it, honestly. And then once I saw different streamers getting codes to play it early, and I watched more gameplay of it, I became more excited to try it out, and I'm not exactly sure why it caught my attention more than when I had watched the videos of the demo, but it definitely did. And I ended up getting the deluxe version so I could play it a little bit early. And to be honest, I did not know what I was getting into. Like, I completed 90% of like FromSoft and Souls games, and I played a lot of Souls-like games, so playing a game like this wasn't new to me, really. But man, I was completely wrong. I'm not going to be giving any spoiler information, but I will be showing late game build and combat in different areas on New Game Plus. This game is a hardcore hack and slash RPG game, and I put in a little over 100 hours, and this game took me longer to beat than any other video game I've ever played in story mode. And I managed to finish the whole story and do every side mission and get majority of the collectibles. And the achievements in this game aren't very challenging to get. You can almost get every single one in one playthrough if you put in the time. As far as the story goes, the game starts out with a cutscene somewhat introducing you to Khazan, your character, who's a betrayed general. And at the start of the gameplay, you're revived and possessed by a meleeed legion of vicious warrior spirits who antagonize him into doing their bidding, and you're constantly hearing this voice taunt him as you start and as you make your way through the snow. And the story is no doubt a revenge tale. Like, Khazan, your character, is betrayed by his empire and labeled a traitor. And once you beat the second boss, you find out who the voice is that's in your head that's been speaking and guiding you throughout the playthrough. And he becomes a big part in the story. After trekking your way through the snow for a bit, the voice eventually heals you and instructs your character to embrace the power of the blade. At that point, you get your first weapon, which is the dual-wield axe and sword, and not long after you pick up that, you get the other two weapon classes, which are the greatsword and the spear. I ended up pursuing the spear build, mainly because I was struggling with the current build I had lazily put together with like no effort. The build I used for the whole game was the Fallen Lord build, which I'm using right now. And you can get this build after defeating the third main boss. And in my opinion, this build was perfect for me. It may not be the best build in the game, but once I started using the spear, I felt like it was the weapon I wanted to use for my build, mainly because I enjoyed the moveset so much. At first, I really didn't have a build. Like I said, I was just using whatever items I came across, and I found out about this build online, and like I said, I stuck with it for the whole game. And each weapon class has some pretty great moves and special moves, and in this game you have a spirit meter, which you can see above my health bar right now, the yellow dots. It's called your spirit meter, and as you hit and kill enemies or bosses, the meter will fill up, letting you do special moves. And you can choose which moves you want in your skill trees based on the build you have. And the game has normal stats you can upgrade, like Soulslike usually have. And as you defeat enemies and bosses, you receive Lacrima. And Lacrima, it represents the Tears of Souls, a spiritual substance that preserves the intense memories of the deceased from their past lives. It's kind of like a really technical way to put it. In simple terms, it's each time you kill an enemy or boss, you absorb their Lacrima, and you can use it to upgrade your stats. This game gives you a skill tree. For each weapon class, there's a different skill tree for offensive moves and defensive moves. And also there's a common skill tree for general skills for every build, including Reflection, Brutal Attack, Counterattack, Javelin, which is a projectile you can throw, and Phantom. And Phantom is an alternate form that provides your character with passive effects. And the skill tree is meant for the build that you want to make, basically. Luckily, you can unlearn each skill if you want. If you decide you want to change your skills to something else, so you're not stuck with one build, which is nice. And you can reset your stats as well, but you will need an item to reset them, which is pretty easy to get. You can get them from merchants sometimes. They have resting points in this game, like most Souls games, and in this game they're called Blade Nexus. And you find these as you progress through the mission, and there was very, very few times where I felt like there needed to be more of them. And by the time I was low on health and I needed to rest, I'd end up running into one of those resting points or opening up a shortcut to one I'd previously been to. And at these resting points, you can use your Lacrima, the item I mentioned before, to upgrade your stats. And at a certain point, when I felt like I was struggling too much on certain bosses, I did go back and try to farm some enemies or bosses. That way I could have a better chance at defeating them. But I've come to find out that it only makes somewhat of a difference. Like, honestly, if you haven't mastered or at least figured out the pairing and mechanics in this game, it doesn't matter what level you are, you'll still have the same issues if you don't practice and get it down. Like, obviously having more health will keep you from dying sooner, but not knowing the mechanics of the game will it'll just kill you really easily. So very early in the game, after you defeat the second main boss, Blade Phantom, he will end up guiding you through the game at some points and becomes a main character. It's not really a spoiler, considering it doesn't say anything about the story or anything, but after you beat him, he ends up bringing you to a place called the Crevice, which is a hub for NPCs and upgrading, basically like a round table hold for those familiar with Elden Ring. And as you progress through the game, more NPCs will join you at the Crevice, as well as merchants, and eventually you get a blacksmith that will upgrade your weapons and gear. The environment and overall world design in this game is peak. Like, honestly, it's so good. And some later game areas reminded me of Lies of P a little bit, like towards the end of the game. The game is mainly a linear experience, but there is side paths in different areas that you can explore that will sometimes lead you to hidden loot or different enemies. I tried my best to explore every bit of the areas that I was in. I feel like they did a good job of mixing it up as far as the game is outside and the snow, and there's buildings and villages and sometimes caves, so there's a good mix of everything. Some of the dark areas and settings reminded me a bit of Lords of Fallen, sort of. The graphics in this game are awesome. It does have like an anime style theme, which I myself enjoy very much. I'm not a huge like anime guy, to be honest, but I don't believe I've seen a Souls-like game that has an anime type characters and graphics, and it really made for some awesome cutscenes. The length in this game is fairly long, but not too long to where it drags on. Like, I probably could have beat the game in a timely manner, like 40 to 50 hours maybe. But like I said before, I put in over 100 into this game, and just beating the story and all the side missions and going back to grab all the jarlings and soul stones and collectibles and stuff. And as far as hours go, it is the longest I've ever spent in the story mode. Like, I've heard of people beating this game, like I said, in like 40 to 60 hours, so it really depends how long it takes to learn somewhat master the mechanics in this game and beat all the bosses. Like I said before, there was never a point in this game where I felt like it was dragging on or I wanted it to end. Like, I've heard of some people say that's what happened to them, but not for me. And after I fought the first few bosses, I knew they were obviously going to get harder and I would need to get better at the game if I wanted to progress. And yeah, I feel like this game is worth every single penny, to be honest. It's really good. As far as bugs and performance issues, I really didn't have any noticeable issues with it. I'm playing on a PC that's like an average build, and I did play this game the day it was available, and I experienced nothing noticeable. I already mentioned the bosses and how hard they are, and I'll mention it again. The first real boss is hard, but I feel like it doesn't compare for what's to come. I struggled with the second boss in the beginning of the game, and honestly, every boss after that. Some took longer than others. The bosses overall can be challenging if you've never played a game like this before. And like I said, I've played a lot of these games, and this game was challenging, for sure. There's a few bosses in this game that I thought I would never beat. And there's some tips and tricks that I learned online that helped me drastically. And if I hadn't found out about these tips, it would have made the game far more difficult, because sometimes these tips aren't something the average person would just end up figuring out on their own, you know? So I have no shame at all, by the way, in saying that I looked up tips online to help me defeat some of the more difficult bosses. Overall, the boss design in this game is so good. No bosses were the same, besides like when you went to bonus missions and you would fight a ghost or another version of the same story boss you once fought. I always knew every area I got into, I was going to end up getting to a new boss that would defeat me and make me struggle, but I always wanted more and wanted to learn their moves, and that's the awesome thing about this game. It never feels repetitive or impossible to defeat the enemies or bosses, and like I said, I'm a fairly experienced player when it comes to games like this, and it took me hours to beat some of these bosses. But it felt like very, very rewarding after I did. And the boss that I struggled with the most in this game was the third boss. And I've never been so frustrated with a game in my life, but in a good way. I felt defeated, but I obviously didn't give up. And he is the real test of this game. I feel like the boss is a test to see if you can handle this game or not, but I did feel like he was kind of difficult for how early you end up fighting him. After I finally thought I beat him, he goes into a second phase and a new health bar, and I honestly couldn't believe it at that point. After like 5 grueling hours of fighting him, I finally ended up beating him, and it felt so good. After I had beat him, it felt like it really helped me figure out the game mechanics really well, and I got my parries down, which is honestly the only way to make any sort of progress in this game is to learn your parries and practice them. After that boss, I felt a lot more confident into going into some of these other bosses. Some are harder than others, but they always gave me a challenge, and never once did I beat a boss within like a few tries. And an average boss would at least take me an hour or so to beat them, and I feel like they really did a good job in designing the bosses in the game. Like, the bigger they are, the easier it is to parry them, in my opinion, mainly because it's easier to react to the hits versus a small enemy. And they also give you a thing called a spirit advocacy, which is a summon that will help you during the boss fights. I myself tried it once during the third boss and then never tried it again. And the items you need to summon these guys for help are called Lacrima of Circulation, and you can get these items from defeating the Revenant of Adversity, which you will see their summons as you progress through the game. They are like red little spirits that are basically everywhere throughout the game, and it's a mini boss enemy that you fight, sort of like an invader, but it's part of the game and not an online player. And for a while, I thought that they were online players that you could summon, and I didn't figure out how to get this item to summon help for bosses until after I finished the game. And to be honest, I'm kind of glad I didn't figure that out, because it made the game more challenging knowing that I couldn't just say screw it and summon some help to get me through the boss. It's totally subjective though, and up to you whether or not you want to use it. Keep in mind there is an achievement that you can get if you go the whole game without summoning help. And I wish I would have known this before I summoned help that one time, honestly. And you are able to upgrade your spirit advocacy with an NPC at the Crevice. Overall, this game is one of the funnest games I've played in a long time. I had so much fun playing it, and like the combat is just so satisfying. I feel like the devs did a good job at fine-tuning the difficulty in the game. Like, it's by no means an easy game at all. Like, even for an experienced Souls or Souls-like player, they do give you 2 options for the difficulty level, and if you do die enough, it'll ask you if you'd like to switch to easy difficulty, which is normal for some games. Like, I myself wanted to experience the game in a normal difficulty setting. That way I could get the full experience, you know? So like I said, there's ways to make the game easier if that's what you're looking for, but if you're looking for a challenge, it'll no doubt give you one. I give this game a 9 out of 10, and I really hope to see more updates of this game and possibly a DLC. Like, if you haven't played this game, you're into challenging yourself, I totally recommend trying it. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Like I said, this is my first review I've ever done, and I hope it won't be the last. Any support on the channel is very much appreciated if you think I deserve it. And yeah, I appreciate you watching, and I hope you enjoyed.